Hello and welcome to Academic Festival. I'm Rosella Garcia, the Senior Director of Alumni Relations. I hope you've been enjoying the programming so far. I'm especially excited about this next session, where we'll go behind the scenes of the EdUp Experience podcast. Hopefully by now you've all tuned in to this rapidly rising podcast. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to an episode yet, might I recommend one that aired in early October and featured our very own Tom Bailey, President of Teachers College. You can find a link to that episode here on the Academic Festival website or at the edupexperience.com. Now, I may be a bit biased, but I personally think it was their best episode yet. The EdUp Experience was actually created by TC alum Elvin, who now serves as the producer of this increasingly popular podcast. And if you ask me, I think his love of TC played a special part in making that episode so great. Today, we thought it might be fun to turn the tables on Elvin. He claims to be more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy, but today he's agreed to be the one in the hot seat, and President Bailey will be interviewing him. So without further ado, let's welcome President Tom Bailey and Elvin Freitas.
Well, thank you, Rosella. And Elvin, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. So really, congratulations on the success of the EdUp Experience.
Thank you so much, Tom. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you. Like she said, I am behind the scenes kind of guy, but for you, I'll be in front of the camera.
I completely appreciate that. But before we start talking about how you came to be a podcaster, let's back up a bit. Now, you studied in our higher and post-secondary education program. So can you tell us a bit about what drew you to TC and a bit perhaps about your career before launching the EdUp Experience?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tom. So I have a very interesting story that, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell, like to share. I think it's hopefully inspiring for others. I grew up with my grandmother, and she's from Puerto Rico. Not a single day of education in her life. She wanted to go to school, but her older sister didn't allow her to. She didn't want her to go to school. So she came to this country, 8 kids. One of them was my mom. And she was pressing education on her kids. And ultimately, I ended up growing up with her. My mom had some other issues she had to take care of. So from day one, my grandma was always, go to school, go to school, go to school. Education is number one. And so I was a bad kid in 2nd grade. And at one time, she actually grabbed me by the ear, took me out of school, and was very upset at me because I wasn't doing good with my grades. And that's when everything changed my life completely. Embarrassed me, but changed my life completely. And from there, I started really doing well. And I started to enjoy school. And because of her, because of my Puerto Rican grandmother, who spoke very little English, not a single day of education in her life. Because of her, I was able to go on to high school. I did well there. And then I went to Northeastern University in Boston, the co-op program. I did that for 5 years. While I was there at co-op, I realized I really enjoyed working on campus, student services, orientation. I was an orientation leader. I worked with residential life, my first taste of student affairs. What is the student affairs profession all about? I met my mentor at the Latino Student Cultural Center. She's the one that said to me, you really should think about grad school. And at that time, I was not concerned about grad school. I just wanted to graduate from my undergrad. And she mentioned Teachers College. Now, at that time, I had no idea that Teachers College was so well renowned, because I really did not travel outside of Boston. I was in Boston. Obviously, Boston was my home. That's all I knew. And so she mentioned Teachers College at Columbia. And I said, okay, sounds good. Let's do it. And so she helped me with the application process. And we wrote my personal essay about my grandmother and my life story. And I went to New York and I had an interview and I fell in love. I fell in love with Teachers College, number 1. I fell in love with Columbia, number 2. I fell in love with New York City, number 3. And I said, this is where I need to be. And everything worked out. I was in the cards, and I ended up being at Teachers College back in the year of 2000, 2001. And it absolutely changed my life. I mean, it's just been the most incredible experience. That it just every single day, I think back to that time that I spent at Teachers College and how much that has affected me as a human being, as a person, as a professional, as a dad. And I have 2 little girls now. And so it really influenced me in the way I think, my mindset. And so after Teachers College, I traveled the world. And that's because of Teachers College. I had met so many different folks, international, like you mentioned that on the podcast, there's so many international folks from different backgrounds, different stories. And being in that classroom with all this diversity of different perspectives and learning from my peers was such huge impact for me. And so I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I had never really left, the US. I really went to Boston and New York, and that's it. I ended up going to China, and I was teaching English in China for a year, and I loved it. And then I moved around. I went to University of California, Berkeley, and then I worked at Michigan State University. And then I found my way back to New York because I fell in love with New York, and I knew I wanted to come back. And so I came back here, and I've worked for a few different institutions. But that has been, it's all because of my experience at Teachers College. All of that, the doors has been open. People see that on my resume. There's so many connections. Oh, I worked there. I went to school there. I know somebody there. The network is just huge. It's amazing. It's so powerful. And so that's a little bit about me before Teachers College, a little bit about me after Teachers College.
Well, you won't be surprised that I'm delighted to hear that story. Of course, it's so gratifying when we realize that we've had an impact on our students, and of course, that's not only do we have an impact on our students, but through our students, that kind of really multiplies and projects the influence that we have. So, that's great. I was in Boston for a while. I lived in Dorchester, so I have some roots in Boston as well. So, so tell us a bit about podcasting. I mean, podcasting has exploded. I think that there's something like 2 million podcasts and more than 48 million episodes. So it's obviously a growing but also very competitive field. So tell us a bit about what attracted you to podcasting, how you chose that to be the particular medium that you're using.
Sure, great question. So again, because of my experience at TC, always wanted to be continuously learning. That mindset of I just want to learn, try something new, try something different. And actually, just to let you know, because of TC, I have a family motto that I use with my daughters. I tell them, always be confident and curious. I feel like those 2 pillars will help them in their personal, professional life, no matter what they do. So as I was being curious, I would listen to podcasts. I found out about podcasting through LinkedIn. I was very active on LinkedIn, and I saw a few folks. One in particular, this gentleman called Gary Vaynerchuk. They call him Gary V. He's very popular in the marketing podcast world. He kept saying, now's the time to start a podcast. Now's the time to start a podcast. And he kept writing about it, publishing videos about it. And I felt like he was speaking to me and said, I think I have something to talk about. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. And when I started the podcast, I started actually a solo podcast called Magendom. And it was to inspire expectant fathers to read to their babies in the womb. And we can talk about that a little later. But I started that, and I was doing some research about podcasting. And what's interesting is that you said it's 2 million podcasts out there, but actually, there are a lot of what's called one and done podcasts. People are very curious, finding out about podcasting. They kind of want to know what it's like. So podcasts that have 10 or more episodes brings that number down to like 780,000. That's it. So it's about being persistent, consistent. And, the medium really drew to me because actually I was always interested in talk radio. I got to listen to I started listening to NPR at TC. No idea what NPR was, but my classmates were talking about it. And so, of course, I got jumped on NPR, and I really enjoyed talk radio. So I really appreciate the medium. And then I thought, wow, this would be really interesting for me to start something and create something. So it's all about the creator economy now, and I wanted to create. I was listening to a few podcasts, and they were saying, a lot of people like to watch and engage, but not create. There are very few that create. And again, that TC mentality, that TC mindset, you get out there and you create. You be the change maker, That's what we do. I get chills talking about it because that's the TC mindset. I mean, look at the alumni. Look at what we're doing. We're change makers, and we create and we make things happen, and it's beautiful. And so I took that and ran with it, and I started my own podcast. And then that was my first foray into it. And from there, I fell in love with it. And then we could talk about how I got to EdUp's.
So, yeah, well, as I said, it's wonderful because for us to be able to feel that, through all of your podcasts, of which we'll talk in much more detail, that we've had some influence. So that's great. That's great to hear. So you said that your first foray into podcasting was dedicated to expectant fathers and fathers of young children. So tell us a little bit more about that, why that's important to you, how that, how you came to focus on that as your and it was your launch into podcasting, right?
Yeah, correct. So it actually all came to me, the idea of, it's called Magendom, is what I call it. That word came to me while I was living in China. I was about to fall asleep, and I was in a daze, and I saw this kid, and he turned to me, and he said, Magendom. And I wrote it down in my journal. I looked it up, and I couldn't find it. And I said, what is this word? And it was always there in the back of my mind, prickling, always the Magendom is there. And so I think around 2015, I figured out what it was. I think it's the idea of expectant fathers reading to their kids in the womb. And the reason why is because I think what happens is there's a really strong connection, and you do a lot of research, with the parents talking to the baby in the womb, reading to the baby in the womb. But it's mostly focused on the females, expectant mother. But I wanted to really focus on the expectant father because expectant fathers, the more involved and engaged they are in their children's lives, the less likely the children are to drop out of high school, less likely they are to go into drugs, less likely to have teenage pregnancy, so less likely to have like suicide issues or thoughts. There's tons of research about the powerful impact of engaged father does. So why not get them started to be connected as soon as possible? And so I thought a nice way to do that would be for the expectant fathers to read to the baby in the womb. And so when I thought about my podcast, I said, what can I do for my podcast? I said, and then Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about that. He said, if you don't know what to do, just talk about your journey. Talk about what you want to do. And so that's what I started to do. I started to talk about what I wanted to do. I started talking about Magendom and how this is something that I wanted to do. And as I, continue to record podcast episodes by myself, I had no guests at the beginning stages. I was learning that one of the issues is that a lot of expectant fathers, especially Latino and African American, they want to go to the doctor's visits with their expectant mothers, but they can't because they'll lose time, they'll lose money, and they need that money, for food and for everything that's coming up. It's very expensive to have a child, so they need that money. So one of the things I noticed is that we need to have more employers recognize that this is an issue and allow these expectant fathers to take an hour or maybe less than that off and have that be paid and go with the expectant mother to these doctor's visits, right? And then have that very powerful moment of when they first hear the heartbeat and that connection there starts. So even if something happens where the mother and the father are not together, the likelihood that that expectant father is going to be engaged in a positive way with that child increases exponentially. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with Magendom. But then I found the EdUp Experience podcast, and that's kind of taken aside for now, although I will bring it back later on.
That is wonderful. And what a great perspective to have. And I totally agree with your, with your ideas about how, the structure of lives that people have prevent them from engaging with their children and with the birth of their children in a way that many people would like to be able to do. So I think that's that's such an important perspective to have. Now you did say that you're doing the EdUp experience. You were a university administrator for for 20 years or so. So how was it tell us about your journey to EdUp? Were there issues that you felt just weren't being addressed and that this was a way for you to be able to do that?
Yeah. So as I was doing my podcast with Magendom, I actually ended up meeting my now co-founder of the Ed Experience, Dr. Joe Salustio, who you had the pleasure of speaking with, had a great conversation with on our podcast. And so we met through LinkedIn, and I really enjoyed meeting him. And he said, have you ever thought about having a guest on your podcast? I said, I've never thought about that. He said, can I be the first guest? And I said, sure, why not? Let's do it. And so he came on and we hit it off. It was fantastic. And we were talking about higher education because he's been in the field 20 plus years and so have I. So we really connected, we clicked. And one of the things that was very interesting is that we both worked for-profit schools. So we understand the for-profit and nonprofit side of it. So we just kind of had a conversation, just like you and he did, about the industry and about what's going on. And so anyway, after he was on my podcast, I kept thinking, I have to find a way to work with him. I like him a lot. There's got to be a way where we can work together. And that's when I sent him a direct message and I said, hey, Joe, I have an idea. And he responds, he says, I don't care what it is, I'm in. So I said to him, why don't we start a higher education podcast? He said, yes, let's do it. And so the reason why that came to me is because, yes, I was looking at the higher education podcast space, what's going on there. And I noticed that it was not many players, and they had kind of the same guests over and over again. And to be frank, they were a little dry. They were not very engaging and very interesting. And it seemed very like it was rehearsed and everything was formulaic. And I said, I think we can be like a huge difference maker in the space with higher education and podcasts, because I want to bring in folks from all over. As you talked about, we got community colleges, we got for-profit, nonprofit, we got people outside of higher ed looking in. So we have folks from all over, and it's been, unreal to see our guest list of people that have come on. And so, we want to be different in the sense that we want to educate, but we also want to entertain and be engaging. And so we have fun, we have a conversation, and people enjoy the conversation. Again, we love higher ed. We're higher ed administrators. We've been in higher ed for so long. And so we want to talk to other higher ed folks too. And folks outside of higher ed to get their perspective as how they see the industry. And so that's what we focused on. And one of the things that, we really doubled down on was the community colleges. And I know that's something that you're big into, the Community College Research Center that you used to work with. And then the piece you just wrote about the Biden administration, talking about their efforts to put in more funds to helping out community colleges and get their students to graduate. So that's what we wanted to hear. We wanted to hear all those amazing stories, right, of what are they doing to help the students get in and get out and go on to either, another college for the 4-year or for the workforce. So we really drill down on listening to all different perspectives, all different voices. And so it's been almost 2 years now, and it's been a wild ride. And so that's a little bit how we kind of started the podcast, why we started. And
I mean, I think is it 350 podcasts? I don't even want that in 2 years. I mean, that's like one every other day. So I know what, in the thinking that I did before, the podcast that you did with me, that took a lot of work. So anyway, I mean, I have to say, I guess I forget exactly how we were first approached to participate in this. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And then, but when I looked, I was just amazed at the number of community college presidents. When we started the Community College Research Center like 20 years ago, we looked at, there was, researchers weren't studying community colleges. Somebody, I think maybe in the early 2000s, sort of counted up the higher education journals and the articles that were in those about community colleges, and less than 10% even mentioned community colleges. And I think less than 5% were actually primarily about them. So, which is, really surprising in the sense that, I think many researchers are concerned about low-income students, about minority students, about, African American, Latino students, immigrants, first generation, and those are concentrated in community colleges. So I was, and many researchers study the institutions that they're at. So you get Ivy League and highly selective colleges. So that was certainly, when I first started listening to some of your podcasts, I said, then you had Walter Bumpus, the president of the AACC, on. You had several community college presidents. You had the president of Gutman Community College, which is here in New York City. He actually gave a plug for our book on redesigning American community colleges, so I particularly liked that. So I just want to, I really want to emphasize how pleased I was. And I think, at Teachers College, we say that, we want to build a smarter, healthier, more equitable world, and, focusing on the institutions that are educating, the majority of students who face so many barriers. I simply have to commend you for that. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that. But you also look at, at other, leaders from nonprofits for-profits. You've had CEOs of ed tech companies, executive directors of foundations and professional associates. So, what are you getting out of that? I think that's really interesting that you're going to these entities and organizations that are deeply involved with higher education. But, certainly as researchers and people thinking about higher education, those are often neglected too. So what were you thinking about when you were kind of going to the, outside the kind of typical issues and organizations that people usually think about when they think about college or higher education?
Yeah. And before I answer the question, I just wanted to add about the variety. One of the things that we're very, very proud of is that we had the president of Spelman College and Howard University on, and we've had quite a few, HBCUs on. And now we're working on getting a lot of Hispanic serving institutes, minority serving institutes, and we're actually going to work on trying to get some more of the tribal colleges on as well. So we really want to hear different voices, and that's something we're very proud of. We take pride in that, and we focus in on that. And so one of the things that early on we wanted to do was we wanted to bring outside voices. And the first one that I will never forget was president of New York iHeartMedia in New York, Bernie Wise. And I'll never forget him because I wanted to bring him on to get his perspective from an employer hiring graduates from our institutions. And so one of the most powerful messages that came across from that episode, and he's been on there twice now, and we're pretty good friends, we're connected. And but one of the most powerful messages is that he kept saying, they get to me, they interview, and they haven't even done their research. I asked them, what do you know about iHeartMedia? What do you know about this position? And they're just pulling strings, and they haven't done their research. And that just boggled my mind. I said, really? They're not doing their research? They're not being prepared for these interviews? And he said, no, it's very rare where you have someone, and those are the winners. Those are the ones they hire when they come in and they do their research. That's something I learned at TC. And every time I left TC and every time I went to a job interview, I did a thorough research. Every time they asked me that question, I knew that question was coming. Because you talk about that too. You talk about how important it is to have career services up front. Oh man, that's so true. It has to be inwoven in the whole journey, the whole experience, you know? You got to have that. And so I knew that after I left TC, I knew what kind of questions they were going to ask. I was well trained, well prepared. And so I always did my research. You know, what do you know about this position? What do you know about this company? Well, I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every single, wow, you did some pretty good research. I didn't even know that. That's great. But hearing it from Bernie Wise, who leads this pretty big company, you know, in New York, it's very surprising. And so I'm hoping that colleges and university administrators and researchers and those who can make these changes are listening to him and listening to the CEO of Logitech, you know, Bracken Darrell, who talks about, again, what is he looking for in a hire? They need to listen to these voices, because that's where hopefully these students will go. They try to get jobs with employers, and they need to be prepared, well prepared. And so part of it is, let's get them on. Let's talk to these ed tech folks, because they're hiring as well, right? And see what are their thoughts about not just like the industry as a whole, but some really practical matters and how higher ed can help prepare our students to be extremely successful, you know, for the next phase of their lives.
No, well, I mean, as you know, I think the issue about career planning and thinking about careers and post-education work, you know, is crucial. And I mean, certainly that's something I learned at community colleges, which often, you know, the students went to the career services, you know, in May when they were graduating in June. And of course, that's, you know, they should be there in the summer before they start their first semester. And that's certainly true, exactly. I think, for us as well. You know, that's, and often students don't think about that. So I think that's a great insight into thinking about what it really means to, you know, connect a student from their, I mean, we like to think of connecting students from before they start to, well, like we're connecting to you, to, you know, to connection throughout, you know, throughout their life. So I mean, I appreciate that your emphasis on that, and I think that's absolutely crucial, and, you know, makes a tremendous amount of sense. So let me think here for my next question. So the goal of the EdUp podcast, which you proudly mentioned, the EdUp Experience website, is to inspire and educate people to pursue a lifelong learning mindset, no matter the path they choose. So why do you feel so passionately about being a lifelong learner, and what drives you to instill that passion in others? I think you've already answered that question, but you can emphasize that again.
Yeah, no. So it was interesting when we were talking about, Joe and myself, what's our goal? What's our mission? What do we want to do? I'm the one that came up with the first draft, you know, and it's basically almost what it is now. And so the idea is that especially because now we talk to so many leaders and we know what the future of higher education is going to look like. We always ask, like we asked you, what does the future of higher education look like, you know? And so a lot of options, a lot of different pathways, a lot of ways to get to where you want to. What is it where you want to get to, right? And so I think it's still a basic concept that goes back to learning to love to learn. You got to learn to love to learn. You want to love to learn and always be continuously learning. And so that's why we said, you know, a lifelong learning mindset, no matter the path you choose, because that will carry you, again, with, like I tell my daughters, with confidence and curiosity, that's going to carry you no matter where you go. And so we want people to walk away always thinking having that mindset, because we believe the podcast, the EdUp Experience podcast, is just one small piece of the overall EdUp experience. We have pretty big plans. One of our big plans is to figure out, you know, how can we incorporate the work I used to do and I wanted to with Magendom into EdUp Experience as part of an umbrella, an array of different services and programs that will go all back to our mission of, that instilling that mindset of lifelong learning, which again, it really came out for me at Teachers College when I had my experience there, and especially working with my colleagues and the professors there. Professors there were just fantastic, always challenging me, always trying to figure out, okay, how can I get Elvin to enjoy and want to learn how to learn? It's you gotta really enjoy wanting to learn, and so I think that's very powerful. And I think we could start that from the minute there's in the womb, and then all the way to someone who's 127. They're still gonna want to learn how to learn and enjoy and have fun learning. And so I think that mindset is really important. And we're very excited that we're just getting started. Again, we've been doing this for less than 2 years, almost 350 episodes, and it's been higher education focused. But that's the podcast, and we believe that's a great avenue, vehicle, and platform to get our message out. But ultimately, we have a lot bigger plans based on our mission to really create almost like an EdUp lifestyle. We want you to, and EdUp obviously stands for Education Up. We want you to really progress, and we want you to be more successful, and we want you to have that mindset that you really want to just be curious and to always continuously learn, even if you're not going down a certain path where it's traditional high school, college, grad school, PhD, whatever it is. Now you've talked about this, certificates and credentialings and stacking, and there's different ways to kind of get to where you want to. But the key is that, and I think the thread is that wanting to learn, that excitement of wanting to learn. And I tell you what, being on this podcast and listening to all of these amazing leaders, one that really stuck out, a phrase that stuck out recently, was from a woman who works at Vivaldi Group. They're a branding company. And so she said, education is the most exciting adventure of our lives. And she's right. It really is the most exciting adventure of our lives. And that's what she wants education institutions to instill in students. And that's what she wants, even from elementary. How do we get these kids off of their eyeballs off the screens, right? How do we get them off the screens of playing and all that good stuff, all these games, which could be educational too, but and more focus on more about the adventure of wanting to learn and loving to learn and that experience. And so I think that was very, very powerful. So, we're just getting started. We're just scratching the surface, and there's a lot more to come.
I think your experience, I think, is a good example of, somebody embarking on a journey and then taking advantage of opportunities that come along. I don't think probably when you were in college or even at Teachers College that you thought you'd be doing podcasts. I certainly, I've often said that when I was in graduate school and somebody said, well, what do you think about community colleges? And I probably would have said, well, what are they? And so, I think the point that you make is that, we don't know what we're going to do. Most people don't have a very linear progression through their careers. And, so what does that mean as an educational institution is that we have to set people up to be flexible. And as you say, to be able to learn, to have the kind of broad skills that allow them to, take advantage of the things that come along. So I really appreciate that, that perspective, because I think, we try to tell students here, be broad. Don't just look at one thing. Of course, you want to get the expertise in the areas that you're doing, but I think, take advantage of other opportunities that you have here. So I think that's a great example and a great perspective to have. Now I do have to question, we are in the middle of COVID, or we're hoping we're getting towards the end of it. And, I think that, I've been president for just over 3 years, and about half of that was in COVID. But you started a couple of months, I guess, when you started your first podcast, there was already, COVID was in China. And so so you've basically operated the vast majority of your work with the EdUp experience has been in COVID. How has that influenced what you've done? How's that shaped the direction that you've taken?
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually released our first episode in January of 2020, and we had the idea probably in December. So it took us a little time to figure things out, the technicalities of it, and get a guest, and then so here we are. We have no idea COVID's around the corner. We know it's in China, but we know it's going to come to us, and so we're just getting guests and we're doing our episodes. And then COVID hits, and we decide to double down. We decide, you know what? Everybody's home. Let's go out and let's get everybody on the podcast and let's see how they're dealing with it, And so we have amazing historical reference now that you can go to, and over 300 episodes of talking to leaders during COVID-19, and back then we were asking them, how are you? How's your family? How are things with you? Is everything okay with you? Because we wanted to first check in with people. And I think it really gave folks an opportunity and a platform, a venue to kind of, air out some of the stuff that they were thinking and going through. And I think it was very helpful in a sense that they were able to talk about their challenges and their struggles and the unknowns and how they were dealing with students, staff, and faculty, and especially the presidents. That's a hard job, Tom. You know that. It's a hard job to be a president. And, we ask, what keeps you up at night? What keeps you coming back, you got lives on your hands and people's livelihood on your hands. And so it's a difficult position to be in when COVID hit. And the amazing stories of how folks said, we went online in a couple of weeks. We never did online before, and we got together as a team, and we said we're gonna do this, and we turned it around, boom, 300 plus courses online, just like that, and it's just phenomenal. It's just amazing. And then they say higher ed, it's a slow moving machine. Not then, not at that time, not when it was necessary, and it was inspiring. And so we wanted to hear more of those stories, So I was always trying to get someone on, and we just doubled down. We said, let's get as many people we can on. They're home. They have some time. I think they would enjoy talking about their experience, what's going on in their colleges, university, what's going on in their heads and their personal lives. And so it worked really well, and it's been fantastic. And so we've had some folks come on actually a second time. And hopefully, Tom, you'll come on with me maybe one time, a second time. And so, they talked about, how is it now? How's the opening going on? And all the different things that they have to worry about with the air molecules. And they never thought they'd be having conversations about plexiglass and distancing and mask. And, it's been really fascinating to hear them come back and talk about that. And some of the really, really hard conversations. We just recorded an episode, and it'll be released out in a couple of weeks, with a president who was saying, we had to cut back. We had to let people go. And to hear her say how difficult of a decision that is, she's a real person. And that's another thing we wanted to do is that presidents of universities and colleges, no matter how big or small, they're real people. You're a real person, Tom. You got feelings, you got emotions, and you're dealing with a lot. And it's very stressful. It can be very stressful. There's the fun part of it where you get to see people grow and develop, and you get to, mentor and help staff and faculty and students. And man, that's amazing. That's why we do this. We want to see people grow and develop and move on and do great things. But there's also those tough decisions when it comes to, enrollment is down. What are you going to do? Where are you going to cut? You're not getting funding from the state anymore. What's going to happen? And so she talked about that, but she said, but now they're leaner, they're meaner, they made the cuts, and people had to understand, and so they're moving forward. So, when COVID hit, that's what we did, Tom. We just doubled down, and we wanted to get as many people on to hear as many stories as possible.
So just another example of how you were able to adjust to changing situations. And I hate to say that COVID is an opportunity, but in some cases it did open up avenues that people didn't think about, and that was another example of how you've been able to do that. I hope because of your TC background in that. So I do have to say that And it sounds like I was going to say you should talk to people about opening, and you answered my question before I asked it. But yes, I mean, closing was difficult, but opening has been much more difficult in all of the decisions that masking, distancing, vaccine requirements, mandates, exceptions. I mean, it's been exhausting. And something else which I really appreciate your emphasis on, which is this is very difficult, and not just for presidents, but it's difficult for everyone, because you don't usually have a situation where you have problems and issues, but at the same time you're worried about your personally getting sick. I think that we don't realize enough about how the kind of toll that this has taken on us and on the other people who we're working with. So I mean, I appreciate that, that emphasis, that you have there. Now, I hear a rumor that you've been synthesizing some of your insights, and are thinking about, putting a series of sort of an anthology of the future of higher education. Are you thinking about putting that together into a book, or I don't know, perhaps the equivalent of a podcast book? So what are you thinking along those lines?
Yeah, so and this was at the beginning. I told Joe, I said, before we get started, I want to ask every single person, every single guest, the same question, and that is, what do you see as the future of higher education? And I told him, and the reason why I want that is because I want to get all this information, put it all together, and it's going to be a book. And so he kind of laughed at me. He's like, yeah, okay, sure. I'll ask him. But here we are. We've had over 100 college and university presidents on. You were one of them, graciously enough. Thanks, Tom. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these amazing minds and all answering the same question. They're all answering the same question. What do you see as the future of education? Synthesize it, find commonalities, and then how does one episode connect to the other episode? And so what we want to do is we want to put it all together in a book. Actually, on our website, edupexperience.com, we already have the President Series. So that's a category. So if you go onto the President Series, you can listen to, we're up to 111, actually, 111 college presidents. And by the end of the year, we might be up to like 130. So we have quite a few scheduled to come on. So we're very excited about that. Women, men, serving all different for-profit, nonprofit, public. So it's very exciting. And so what we want to do is we want to put everything in a book. And hopefully it will be done by summer of 2022. That's our goal. We're still trying to figure out a title, going back and forth a little bit with the title. But the idea is that we want this to be a book where folks in higher education and outside can reference and say, I need to get ready for the enrollment cliff. I need to get ready to figure out what is the future of higher education. Well, here it is from over 100 college university presidents during the time of COVID, and a little bit after, or if there is an after. I guess it will always be with COVID, but there's this information that will be there for folks to reference, and that's really what we want. We want them to reference it and to use it for whatever they need it for. We want to put in some really practical solutions in there. One of the things that I think stands out in terms of I know you'll probably like this example is Motlow State Community College. They just teamed up with, I don't know if you saw this, T-Mobile, and they're giving out cell phones, 5G cell phones, to over 2,000 students, and it's all paid for. So they don't have to worry about their cell phone bill. They don't have to worry about it. They can really focus, and they preloaded it with some coursework and resources to help the students, complete their degree, and that's the goal. That's what they want to do, and so that's very creative, very practical, and that's the kind of stuff we're going to add in the book. These are some key takeaways. Not only is it theoretical and what we think it's going to look like, but here are some folks doing certain things that you can do now and implement in your institution, on your campus, to make these changes in the future. And so we're very excited about this. We're collaborating with a person that's going to help us write the books. It's going to be myself, Joe, and and her name is Kate. And it's going to be hopefully, again, summer of 2022. So if people are interested in learning more, go on to edupexperience.com, subscribe to our email list, and we'll be sending updates from there.
Yeah. I'm going to, as soon as we get off, I'm going to go pre-order. So that's, I mean, that's that sounds great. I mean, and obviously you've had, you'll be able to distill the experience of so many people, which you've, and as I have emphasized, a broad range of people, not the usual suspects, that we have. Is there something else? I mean, you've already said something about the things that you're planning to do next. So I don't know if there's anything else about your future plans with the EdUp that you might want to emphasize or say. I mean, perhaps, I know you so many things you've already said have been so ambitious, but I don't know. I want to give you a chance to, to round that all up and say if there's anything else you're planning to do.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're very, very excited about is that we got invited to attend the WISE conference in Doha, Qatar, as a media partner. So that's a World Innovation Summit for Education through the Qatar Foundation. So we'll be there December 7th, 8th, and 9th, and we're going to do podcast episodes, recording some, just fantastic educational minds from across the world that will be attending. And so we're very excited about that. For my first time in Qatar, I've traveled a lot, but I've never been to Qatar. I got all 6 continents except Antarctica. That's the only one I got left on. So hopefully I'll get Antarctica before soon. And so we're very excited about that. Extremely proud that we got invited. And I think for the future of EdUp, like I said, we're just scratching the surface. We believe EdUp is a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's a place. It's something that you're always thinking about, where you want to education up. You want to continuously improve. And again, that's part of TC. There's always that continuous improvement, right? You always want to improve as a person. And so I think, we're going to focus in on the podcast because that's our platform and that's what, but eventually we're going to start growing. We also have a podcast network. So that's something I do want to mention. We have about 17 shows. We have 6 spin-offs, and the rest are affiliates. And spin-offs are basically, they have the name in the podcast. So we have EdUp Australia, EdUp Legal, which is a new one. EdUp Legal which is getting really, really good engagement, and it's talking about law schools and deans from different law schools, and so that's been great. EdUp EdTech, EdUp STEM, EdUp K-12. So we're very excited about that network, and I think we're going to try to work on increasing that. We want to be in, we make education your business. That's one of our models here, and that's what we want. We want everyone to have an involvement in education. The saying is education is everyone's business. Well, we make it your business. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that people are thinking about it from the beginning stages of life all the way to the end. It doesn't stop. It just continues. It just always continues. And it's that creating that mindset, that want to learn, that excitement, that greatest adventure of your life of learning. That's the most beautiful thing. And you got to tap into that. And how can we get that to folks that need to hear that? Folks in lower economic levels, Latino, African American, in the U.S., outside the U.S. How do we go that? We would like to start different podcasts in different countries, and so we, like I said, we're scratching the surface. We're very excited about where EdUp is going. I never thought I'd be sitting here with you, Tom. I'm so honored. Thank you so much, for taking the time, for you to take the time to talk to me. I'm very, very humbled by you, and you're amazing. Thanks for coming on. You've been fantastic. You're such a great supporter, and I really mean it. If you would love to come on with me, we could do a podcast together with a community college president. I think it'd be a lot of fun and engaging. And so, just thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Well, so I have one more question. I really was shocked that you'd done 350. What is that's 20 a month or something? So I just want to say, if there's some way we can help you, I mean, I'm surprised that you've taken a couple of hours to talk to me, because you must be out there, finding people and planning. That is so. So we're of course we have lots of experts and other alumni as yourself, I think, are out there, I hope taking advantage of their TC experience and trying to do many of the things that that you're trying to do. I mean, I noticed that you had Mildred Garcia, the president of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, who's also the first Latina president in the largest system of public higher education in the country. So anyway, if there's any way that we can make your job, as a producer easier, we certainly have contact anybody of our alumni who are watching this. They might reach out or get in touch with Elvin if you have ideas about that. So just, I don't know if there's anything we can do to help you. We're here. So,
well, I appreciate that, Tom. I mean, you've done more than enough. And if there are alumni out there, they're interested in being a guest, they're doing some really cool stuff, by all means, reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, Elvin Freites. I'm the only one there. So just find me on LinkedIn. Or if not, go to edupexperience.com, send us a message through our website. Let us know you heard about me and EdUp and what we're doing. So if you know someone that you think we should try to get on, that would be fantastic. If you're interested in starting your own spin-off podcast and want to be a part of the podcast network, or you already have a podcast and you want to be part of the network, please get in contact. We would love that. So that would be super helpful.
okay, well, we do. So, well, we should connect. So listen, I just want to tell you how I really enjoyed getting to know you. I'm so impressed with with what you've accomplished and with the perspective that you have. I mean, I'm I'm so proud of you as a TC alum. I hope we have been able to contribute to that, and the impact that you're having, the kind of perspectives that you have, the goals that you have. I mean, they're totally consistent, with what we hope, we're doing at Teachers College. So I'm very gratified, to have this conversation. Let's work together. Let's keep in touch.
Yes.
I mean, you've actually given me several ideas about ways that we can go forward. And so I just want to wish you luck. I don't think you need luck, frankly, because I think you have been able to put this together. You've been able to adjust to as things have changed and taken advantage of those opportunities. So really, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great, and we'll certainly be working together. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Honor and a pleasure.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
All right. So, and I'll get off and pre-order my book.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it.